Dr. Gorin actually hired me.
Sorry about that. Yes, Mr. Gorin, he hired you, didn't he? All those many years ago. When you were so young.
Exactly. Many, many years ago. I was.
So
it
young
was frightening.
Wide-eyed. You've seen a few changes since being there.
I have. President Parks was president when I started as a graduate student.
Oh, wow.
A tidbit for fun, he was before the days of wearing black suits, dark suits. Oh. I remember he would wear a gray suit.
Yes.
And one time he wore some kind of a greenish looking one. So I never remember President Parks as wearing dark suits.
It was probably the time of sport coats. You had a lot of. You had a lot of, but yeah, I remember President Parks, and he typically was in a gray suit. Yeah, gray or other, not black.
Nope.
Aaron, should we give folks another minute or two?
Probably. Okay. Give those who went to the state fair a little time to get back on and get their wits about them this morning.
Well, I think we can go ahead and get started. So we'll call the August 14th of 2023 Rotary Club of Ames meeting to order here today. So we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand if you're able to, and we'll recite together. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And you can either remain standing or sit down. I know we're not in person, but if there's anyone in particular that anybody would like to come off on mute, and somebody that we should keep in our thoughts today and this week, I'll just start with, I'm sure we've all seen the news reports of what's happened over in Maui and Hawaii, specifically the Lahaina area, with the wildfires that swept through there and just exacerbated with some of the tropical storm or hurricane winds. In fact, that was actually where my wife and I went on our honeymoon many, many years ago. But many confirmed dead, still many missing. You know, the loss of life and property, culture, and history is pretty staggering, and the news continues to get worse. So definitely want to keep keep all those involved, first responders, but the people that have been displaced and lost. It's really tough. So let's keep them in our thoughts this week. Or any others, or any other connections to Jenny? I know you spend. Jenny Legates is on. I know she spends a lot of time over, or just recently was over in Hawaii. So I don't know if there's any other stories to share, connections to what's happening over there.
No, on the Big Island, there were some wildfires still on the dry side of the island, but nothing compared with what happened in Lahaina.
Okay, well, I'm not hearing any others, so let's just take a moment and put them in our hearts and our minds, and if there's other things we can do from I'm sure there's GoFundMe's out there or other ways to help, please give it some thought. So we'll take a second. Okay, thank you. All right. Not sure if we have any guests on today other than our guest speaker, but we'll get to that in a moment. Let's have an announcement here. Oh, excuse me, Karen, clicking through the deck here. So we'll do the welcome song first. And so, Louis, are you queued up and ready to go?
I am ready.
Okay.
Ready to welcome all of the Rotarians today, and have you all join in, please. Welcome to you from Ames Rotary, Nevada, London, or Gay Paris, from far off lands or the USA. We're glad that you are here today. Come back again whenever you're near. Join us, and then we'll make it clear. Around the world you will always be. Welcome at Rotary.
Thank you, Louis. Very much appreciate that. And as you can see on the screen, services for Del Bloom will be held Friday, August 18th at First Methodist Church. Visitation is at 10 a.m. and church services 11, followed by luncheon. And if you'd like to make a memorial contribution in Del's honor, please forward to and even in life and in death, he's continuing to serve and think of others before himself, as going to the Rotary Club of Ames, P.O. Box 327, Ames, Iowa 50010. And you all should have a copy of the PowerPoint. If not, Karen can get that information to you, or I can, and funds collected will be sent to the Rotary Foundation. So if you have any cards, please mail them to Georgia at the address you see on the screen below. So, all right. Well, with that, I'm going to invite, oh, not yet. We got one more slide in here. The fall season for the Ames Miracle League begins Saturday, and we need some volunteers. So if you've got some open time Saturday morning, I think it's Karen, maybe only an hour or two, a couple hours at most, I think, just to go out there and kind of just be a helping hand. And they have, some staff and others that really kind of do the bulk of the heavy lifting and make sure all the kids are in the right place. You're just there to be giving high fives and helping out. So if you could get in touch with Karen, that would be fantastic, because they do need some help on Saturday mornings. So, and I'll invite Katie McMahon to the microphone to introduce our guest speaker today. Please, if you do have any questions, think of any questions throughout the course of Diane's presentation here. Please put them in the chat. Diane, there'll be a chat feature at the bottom. I'm not sure how familiar with Zoom you are, but if you used it before, we'll collect those and then at the end of your presentation. You can kind of serve as your own little moderator, read the question and answer as you go. That would be great. So without further ado, I'll let Katie introduce our guest speaker today. Katie.
Yes, thanks, Mason. Good afternoon, everyone. So today we're lucky to have Diane Birt with Ames Interfaith Refugee Alliance to chat with us. Ames Interfaith Refugee Alliance is a collaboration of volunteers and nonprofits seeking to advocate for and raise awareness of refugees, have Ames included as a site for refugee resettlement, and to support refugees in our community to help promote their independence and success. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Diane and have her give us her presentation. Thanks for being here, Diane.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Mason. I will move into share screen here to bring up the presentation. And I might just say, as we're beginning here, I'm also still the faculty at Iowa State University, Department of Food Science and Human Nutrition. I still a distinguished professor there, and this is one of the things I'm doing in retirement. So Barbara, anyone else? I know Barbara's retirement's coming up soon. We'll be happy to have you consider joining us. The Refugee Alliance in Ames started in 2015. It came out of the United Church of Christ, the Social Justice Committee. I was chairing the committee at that time. George Bolitzos, who I think is very active in the Noon Rotary, is a member of that. And we decided that the refugee issue, at that time, it was a Syrian refugee crisis, that was something we really wanted to emphasize in our congregation. But this is not something that should be done by one congregation. It should be, you know, this opportunity to serve should be shared across the city. And we started out as interfaith, mainly churches, but now it's gone far beyond that. A lot of service organizations, many different types of groups are connected, and we have many unaffiliated people who are also members of our group. I need to get those out of the way. Just a few statistics on displacement. Displacement, of course, a lot of these people end up as refugees. Some end up as immigrants. The whole issue between immigrants and refugees gets very confusing. I'm going to focus on refugees throughout most of my talk, but I do have a couple slides on immigrants just to kind of compare how the issues are a little different. But in displacement, we are now at 110 million individuals displaced. And just to tell you, back when this alliance first formed, back in 2015, it was at 60 million. It's doubled since 2015, the number of displaced people. And this is from the refugee facts and statistics coming out of the UN. And the latest data here, as you can see, is May of 2023. And this includes 35.3 million refugees, 62.5 million internally displaced people. These are within their country of where they live. 11.3 million Ukrainians, more or less half internal and half external, and 5.2 million Venezuelans. The Venezuelan and the Ukrainian issues, of course, are the more recent, very serious issues. Syria continues to be very high on the list of displaced people. Oh, and I moved things around, and now it's not letting me advance. Let's see. I moved things around. There we go. This is a graph coming out of the State Department. And what I really want to show here is the annual ceiling and compared to the number of admitted refugees. In blue, of course, the annual ceiling. This is set usually by Congress, but the president makes a suggestion and Congress then will confirm that. And you can see that back in 1980s, our ceiling was very high. It's bounced around quite a bit, was really at a very low point in 2020. That was when the last president really cut the ceiling dramatically and was raised by President Biden. But notice how the number admitted has stayed very low. I haven't seen data on this, but I suspect it's because the infrastructure was decimated for bringing refugees into the country. So while we've raised the ceiling back up to close to where it was in 1990s, we still we're not bringing that many refugees in. These are looking at UN vetted refugees. UN vetted refugees have a pathway to citizen. They receive services through resettlement agencies. In Iowa, that would be the Catholic Charities or the U.S. Committee on Immigrants and Refugees in Des Moines, Lutheran Services, and then there are a couple of other smaller, but those are some of the bigger ones in Iowa that maybe you've heard about. They get immediate and indefinite work eligibility, and they have to repay a travel loan, so their travel is covered, but they are expected to repay that. The refugees that are coming from Ukraine, Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, Venezuela are coming as humanitarian parolees. This is the large number that are coming at the present time. They have work eligibility, but they don't have a pathway to citizenship. They need a sponsor and for a 2-year period of time to get travel authorization. Afghan evacuees, they came with humanitarian parolee. They don't need a sponsor. They're settled through the resettlement agencies. They receive immediate refugee immediate support and are allowed to work, but they need to have a pathway for citizenship. And currently in both houses of Congress, there is a bill to give them a pathway to citizenship. And if you like to reach out and say that there's something that our legislators should support, personally, I think this is in desperate need of support. These are people who were collaborators with the U.S. military in our time in Afghanistan, and they should receive immediate support. So hopefully that will come through. And you've heard a little bit already in the introduction about the Ames Interfaith Refugee Alliance, so I won't belabor it here. We educate ourselves and others about refugees. That's why I'm here to talk to you. And we work both with arriving and former refugees to help make them self-sufficient. Refugees, when they do get support, those coming through the U.S. State Department get 3 months of support. As you can imagine, it's impossible for them to get settled in 3 months. So we do assist. We're assisting people that have been here, came as refugees 10 years ago, but they're still struggling. These largely in our Ames community are from South Sudan. We have quite a community of South Sudanese here, and I'll give you a story of one of the South Sudanese. The arriving refugees in Ames right now are largely Ukrainians. We tried to see if we could get some of the Afghan evacuees here, but since they were being settled by the resettlement agencies, they didn't want to settle them in Ames, which was, Des Moines is settling a lot of them, but they didn't want to have that distance. And then we advocate on behalf of refugees, and part of that advocacy is things like just what I was saying about the need for legislation to get a pathway for citizenship for the Afghan folks. We hope eventually there'll be pathways for citizenship for some of the others that are coming on the parolee pathway. So some of the ongoing activities of our Refugee Alliance in 2017, that's not too long after we got the organization going in 2015, we settled a family from the South Sudan, and we continue to work with that family. They're still really struggling. It's a family, a mom and 3 children, and she's had another child since she's come to Iowa. In 2018, we had a woman from the South Sudan who came with her 4 children, and she continues to get help from the Refugee Alliance. You will hear her story in just a little bit. Her name is Adar. And we expanded our kind of mission to look at former refugees who live in Ames. We did that, I think it was about in 2018 as well. And now we have 13 to 14 South Sudanese families that we're working with. We're finding now some of the people who came, their children are struggling with different issues. So in many respects, we're working with the children of the refugees, the original refugees. And in 2022, we embraced serving the Ukrainian humanitarian parolees. We presently have 42 humanitarian parolees in 16 families. All but 2 of the adults have jobs. Initially, they had to wait for several months to get authorization to work, but fortunately, someone in Washington figured out that that was crazy. These are people who want to work right away, and now they are authorized to work as soon as they arrive. Although some of the businesses want to wait till they have what they call EAD, an employment authorization document. So sometimes there's still a barrier, but they are authorized to work immediately. Okay, this is the story of a South Sudanese woman that I want to share with you.
My mom left with 4 kids. She have 8, but other 4, 2 of them, they were gone to Red Army. They were boys, and they got took away at the age of 6 and 8 years old because we ran out of men for war. So they come and take the kids to prepare them to go fight. And then my mother, the war came and hit the place called Turale, and she took us, like I said, 4 of us, my older sister, my brother, and me. At the time I was 2, I believe. My sister, she was 3 months old, and we were walking weeks and weeks and weeks, so 3 to 4 weeks before we hit the border, which is the place is called Abyei. And so the condition was really, really bad. I remember that my mother have 1 can of peanut butter. Every night we have to take 1 spoon for dinner to make sure that peanut butter lasts us 3 weeks of the 4 weeks that we have to walk. Mm-hmm. People with kids, they leave them behind because kids cry and make noise. And then the army, when they hear kids crying, they know that's how people walking, so they start shooting at people. Mm-hmm. So what they do, if your kids are younger, they don't want you to walk with them. It was about 200 people traveling from South Sudan. We were going to North Sudan. Hundred of people die on the way. Some of them got shot, some of them died of sickness and hungry, rain, cold, and it was really bad weather. So my mother would leave me under the tree with my sister and say, like, you two stay here, be quiet, no noise, nothing like that, till she come back to come get us. In Khartoum, the condition was really, really bad. When we made it, well, none of us speak Arabic, of course. Just at once, people was just coming out of nowhere and arrived to Khartoum. A place is called Bahari. I was hungry. My stomach was really hurt, and then the hurt was gone, so I don't feel anything anymore. So when I stopped complaining, my mother knew that I'm dying. We eat dirt, and we eat sand, like there was some soft sand. You have to eat it, and it tastes different, and you drink water after that, so you pretend that it's food. till we survive. So that's what was the condition. I think for 3 years or 2 years. I remember when I turned 5, that's when I started my first job as a babysitter. Some of us are still affected by that until now. Mental or to be able to settle in the United States is not easy. Trust is not easy, and a different culture, and we are trying to get along with it, to learn how to survive. And thank God that we came here to this country to have the second chance to become a better. So I came with the arranged married. I was married at age at 14. I was engaged at 13, got married at 14. My age has changed. In order for me to leave from Khartoum to Egypt, I have to be old enough. And I have to be old enough in American law to be someone's wife.
Yeah.
So that's how I came. I went to Egypt in like a real age of 15 years old, but I was already 22 years old in my document age, yes.
Yeah.
I was in Egypt for 2 years, doing my process with my ex-husband now, doing the married visa. And I was about to go to UN and to tell you on my story. I don't want that married because I don't know him. I never met him before. But they're threatening me if I go there, it's going to be a problem. And also because they pay dowry. For the beginning of 2003 when I came to US, I thought I was going to go to school. Consider myself very lucky. And then when I came here, instead of me going to school, he put me to work. So I've been working and having a baby and working and having a baby and working and having a baby. Yeah. And for 10.5 years until I said enough is enough. And I was going through mental abuse and some physical abuse. I left. So I kept lying to him and I said I would, yes, I'll be there and I'll be there, and I never. And when he left, gone to work, I still have a house key. I went back and stole my document because he hid my document from me. He took everything from me, so in order for me not to have any access to anything, so I stole my documents, my social security and birth certificate from my kids. There's a lot of movies in Lifetime. And it's still now, like sometimes when I think that I'm weak and I look back and I see those shows and I see those women did and change their life, they went to school, they do this, and I said I can do it too. I never thought that one day someone will ask me to sit down and tell my story.
Adar is still in Ames, and she is at the stage now of trying to get what's called Welcome Circle. The State Department has a new program, they're calling it Welcome Circles, to bring refugees, people who are fully vetted as refugees, and she has a large family still in Egypt in refugee camps that she is hopeful she will be able to bring. And that's one of the programs that the Refugee Alliance is going to be focusing on in the next few years, is to help some of the South Sudanese who are already here bring family that are presently in refugee camps. So that's a new program. Let me get now to the humanitarian parolee story of a Ukrainian. This is Yevhen Shevchenko and his wife Oksana, Nastya, and Sasha, their children. They lived in Donetsk. The map here shows Donetsk in eastern Ukraine. And a lot of the words in this section, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to change slides. A lot of the words in this section are his words. So you'll see some quotations and some things. So he talked about it being a big city with all the benefits. He formed a business there in 2013. Of course, as I'm sure you all know, in 2014, Russia took Crimea, or as they call it, Krim, and part of eastern Ukraine, the part that has Donetsk in it. So they lived really under Russian occupation or Russian rule. And in 2014, you know, they couldn't imagine having war, but they expected it would return to normal in a short time. But unfortunately, they lived under the Russian occupation. Curfews were standard, and their quality of life really dropped with this. Now, sometimes when I move things on the screen, I have trouble getting control of this again. I've done a lot of, I don't know what, there we go. When the war hit again in 2022, of course, conditions got even worse. The picture here, the embedded picture, shows his brother's home and what happened to it in 2022. They couldn't leave the house after 11. Russia was slowing border crossings. February 24th, they really started bombing that area heavily. Schools closed, healthcare was bombed, deteriorated, doctors left, hospitals were bombed. All men up to 55 years of age were taken into the Russian army. Yevon is in the age that he would have been taken into the Russian army. As he noted here, a friend from his was taken from work in Kherson. He fought from February to August. He was fighting against Ukraine, although he's Ukrainian. The Ukrainians captured him, put him into prison, and the last that Yevon heard, he was still in prison. And he's an electrician. He said he didn't want to fight. He wasn't a fighter. He had no military background. And so this is one of the big push factors that Yevon decided to get his family out. Yevon and Oksana. February 2022, they actually considered going to our southern border. You may have heard that some Ukrainians were coming to our southern border, and they seriously considered that. But then in April of 2022, Uniting for Ukraine started, and they posted about 10 to 12 times looking for a sponsor. And finally, North Americans for Ukraine, one of the organizations that matched them with my husband and myself and Van Dusen's. Van Dusen's had agreed to be the host family. They had asked us several times, this is Ben and Sarah Van Dusen, they'd asked several times if there were refugees coming that they could host. And so we partnered with them. Ken and I as the sponsors, and the Van Dusen's as the host, and connected with them, made a match. I can say within 3 hours of saying that we filled out forms saying we were looking for a family of 4, we heard about the Shevchenko family. The North American for the Ukraine had identified them as a family that was really at high risk of not being able to get out if they didn't get them out soon. This was in July of last year, so just a little over a year ago. So in 2 weeks, they received travel authorization. It's not happening that fast now. And then they I think it took about another 2 weeks for them to get things arranged so they could get out. And they went to Istanbul, is the first place they went. And this shows their pathway. They came out through Russia. They had to go to this area in Russia where they could get down to get to an airport that was still working to fly to Istanbul. And essentially, I think maybe it's the next slide. Anytime I move something, I have trouble. Some of the Zoom things get in the way of the slides, so I move things around a bit. Come on. Not sure how to regain control. Let me change something here and see if that helps.
You might just be able to hit enter and see if it advances.
That did it. Okay. I feel like let's see, well. Okay, thank you. So they, I think I mentioned they went through Istanbul, but Oksana and the children went to Istanbul first because Yevon, and they were very well aware that Yevon would be the hardest one to get out. And it took, the family was there about 4 days, and then he followed, and it took him twice trying to get across the border into Russia, and he almost missed his flight trying to get out of Russia to join his family. This shows the family. The two children with their thumbs up are the Ukrainian children, Sasha and Nastya. And Oksana is the woman with bright red hair. If you happen to go to Walmart, South Walmart, and you see someone with bright red hair, that's Oksana. I don't think there's anyone with hair quite her color. I guess this particular picture doesn't have a picture of Yevon. I think Yevon, when we put this together, was giving the talk. So they are now living in a house here in Ames, and they are getting ready to purchase a house. Yevon is an engineer, and he's working in Bluestone Engineering in Des Moines for a while. They thought they might move to Des Moines, but I think that they want to settle long-term in Ames. They've made a lot of connections here. We've brought quite a few Ukrainians in through this Uniting for the Ukraine program. So there's a bit of a community here, and the children are doing well in school. So I think they're going to stay in Ames, at least for now. So I want to tell you a little bit about immigrants, just to show the clear distinctions. They relocate to live in another country. They undergo vetting by the embassy or consulate. They're complex categories. Many have a family connection. They can return to their own country. Unlike refugees, they generally can't. They receive no initial government financial support. And immigrant statuses are immigrants who have obtained US citizenship. There are many of those in the country. Lawful permanent residents, temporary visitors, and undocumented immigrants. We hear a lot about problems with immigrants. Really, the focus there, people are thinking only of the undocumented immigrants. So move things around, and there we go. If we look at unauthorized immigrants, undocumented immigrants, it's at about 10 million, 23% of total immigrants. And notice that naturalized citizens, lawful immigrants, is almost half of immigrants. So all of what we hear about immigrants, really, it's the unauthorized immigrants that cause the most angst, and that number has really not changed in the last probably 10 to 15 years. So this idea that immigration is a big problem is really, I think, very much overblown. So I just wanted to make sure we got that in there. And then undocumented immigrants, most came to the US legally. They came as tourists, temporary work visas, children who had no say in their status, and they remained after their visa expired. That's how most of the undocumented immigrants came. We do have many coming across the border seeking asylum and risking detention. Recently, those numbers have declined, but there really is an overemphasis on those coming across the border. And DACA is really to help those who came across as children who had no say in their status. And as it says down here, more than 1.3 million US residents were eligible for DACA when it was implemented, but not all of those have taken advantage of that. And there's been some changes, and again, we need to have DACA updated. The Refugee Alliance is seeking hosts and sponsors That's probably one of the biggest things we're pushing on now. Sponsors need to be a lawful U.S. resident. They need to show financial resources for basic needs for 2 years. But you don't really need to have those resources if you're here in Ames, because the Refugee Alliance is providing any financial needs for these Ukrainians. A big thing that a sponsor does is provide friendship and guidance. Like for the Shevchenkos, we help them figure out what they're going to need to do for their taxes this last year. We're helping them to try to understand credit ratings and what they need to do to be able to eventually get a loan. We help with car insurance, a lot of the things that are very different between here and Ukraine. Hosts need to be willing to provide for housing and basic needs, and they commit generally to 3 to 4 months. Sometimes the Ukrainians are ready to live independently at 6 weeks. Sometimes they get jobs and they want to have their own place. And sometimes we had a couple that we sponsored or we hosted beginning in January. They were with us through July just because they chose an apartment, and then it took a while for the other people to move. Volunteers are also very much needed. They assist with matching the sponsors and hosts. They assist with financial backing, as I've already mentioned, and cover all billable expenses. And here I'm having trouble. There we go. Sponsors do the filing with USCIS. You set up an account with them, you go in. I found it takes about an hour to file for each person that you are helping to come to the US. Then you help with the filings with the Iowa Department of Human Services. They get Medicaid, SNAP, and FIP. And you communicate closely with the hosts and the AIRA contacts. The hosts provide safe housing, meals, initial contacts with volunteers, and assess needs. And then we have a lot of volunteers, and they help English lessons, English conversation, financial literacy, connecting them with services and relationships, family, kind of being their family here in the US. Sponsors or hosts can help enroll in school, help with medical or dental, public transportation, banking, job, childcare. Transportation, a big thing is a lot of the jobs that people get, the better jobs, they need a car. You can take a bus to a few of the jobs in Ames, but finding the whole thing of getting a job, getting housing, and needing a car pretty much hits at the same time. So those are really crunch times, and having someone to lend them a car for a period of time has been very important. Another thing that I don't have on here is helping them get driver's licenses. So there's a lot of things that probably we didn't put on there. So this ends my formal time of. So thank you. I in particular thank the immigrants and refugees for the stories and their trust in us. Volunteers who make these newcomers welcome, and the service providers who help meet their needs. And I see the chat has a couple of questions. Okay. How have you managed language barriers? It's challenging to introducing children to the school system. The Ames school system does a wonderful job with English as a second language. And of course, children learn English quickly. Oksana is often asking Nastya, her daughter, to help translate and things when I talk with her. Yevin's English is very good. Oksana has struggled. We have English language learner teachers who have been working with us for this last year, and they're tremendous. They've been running English classes. They'll sometimes do individual lessons. We also have English conversation time. There's a weekly meeting, and this is where we need volunteers to help with English. Doesn't one need to show they have about 40,000 finances for about 2 years to sponsor? Okay, you need to show you have finances. My understanding is if you have an annual income of around 40,000, you probably can sponsor, I think, maybe even up to 8 to 10 people. The actual number, the actual dollar amount that they look for, like for welcome circles and things, is about 2,000 per person to get them established. And what we have found in our work with the humanitarian parolees is probably 2,000 per person is about right. But right now, that money is actually coming from the Refugee Alliance. We had a fundraising campaign and raised specifically for Ukrainians, and raised about $34,000 in last year. And money continues to come in for the Ukrainians. Okay, we enjoyed working, welcome Ukrainians. Yes, okay. Thank you, Tammy, for yes, we very much enjoyed the Stevens program with the Lviv Philharmonic. And I know the Ukrainians were thrilled with that. Private, yes, we're private. We're funded through private donations. No federal or state funding assistance. The refugee settling organizations in Des Moines that I mentioned, they do get some assistance, but even they don't get enough money to help to meet the needs. Government money is very limited. Any other questions, or somebody just want to turn on their audio? Tax deduction available for providing housing. I have not heard about a tax deductible. I don't know, is anybody good at taxes? Maybe somebody can look into that for us. I can recruit a volunteer to help us figure that out. Any other questions? And if you want, you can just turn off your mute and ask it directly. What sort of documentation do the refugees arrive with? Oh, it depends upon where they come from. The family that came out of Donetsk, their medical records had been destroyed. The children had to get totally re-immunized because they had no immunization records. Of course, they have to have a passport. They have to in order to get the travel authorization. Sometimes we have one man that we are sponsoring who lost his passport when he was leaving Ukraine. His suspicion was that it was picked out of his pocket, probably by a Russian, because Ukrainian passports were much more valuable in Europe than a Russian passport. And they were coming out with a lot of Russians. So that's his suspicion. He doesn't know for sure, but he had to get the passport replaced. It took about 6 months to replace the passport. So they have to have a passport. But as far as documentation, like on their education, it's very hard. I mentioned Yevhen Shevchenko, an electrical engineer. He really, other than saying that he has a degree, he can't really get the documents to prove it. So he is working for an engineering firm. I think they're quite happy with him, but he can't put that professional engineer behind his name. So it's limited. It depends upon the people. Did I miss anything? Really encourage you to consider whether you would be interested in sponsoring or hosting. Sponsoring is a longer term commitment, but it isn't a heavy lift, particularly with the generosity of our community, because the Refugee Alliance will cover the costs. Hosting is a shorter term, but a little heavier lift. We had a young couple living with us for, as I mentioned, 5 months. Wonderful couple. They're like family now. They're like our kids. But it was disruptive having somebody in the house with you. So
I would, this is Barbara. I would suggest if you have an hour or so, try volunteering with language with people as conversation partners. It's just so amazing to see a couple and then little children, and they come into the space with you and how quickly they understand. And it's a pleasure to see people that you work with out in the community. I saw yesterday a couple that I'm getting ready to work with at the bus stop. So I was pleased that they could use the bus system because I know to do that. And I'm a little suspect that I could do that if I had to go someplace that I did not speak the language, not understand basics. So if you got an hour, Barbara would ask you to please step up and become a conversation partner.
Yeah. Thank you, Barbara.
So thank you, Diane. Thank you, Barbara. Diane, if a Rotarian wanted to volunteer some time or maybe get some more information, how would they go? What's the best method of reaching out and contacting you?
Just reach out and contact me. Would you like me to put my email in the chat?
Yeah, that would be wonderful if you could do that.
I will do that. Sorry, I think
That's okay. That's okay. While you're working on that, or if Katie or Karen have it, they can certainly drop it in there too. But
it looks different than it usually does for some reason. Okay, here it is. Okay, and then
okay, great. Thank you, Diane, for putting your contact information, email, and phone. That's appreciated. We're recording this presentation, so all this should be available. And if there's anybody that misses it, they can certainly reach out to either Karen, myself, or Katie to obtain that information and get in touch, or Barbara, and get in touch with you as well. So thank you so much for your time, and really wonderful presentation to learn more about what's happening in our community with refugees. So thank you.
okay, thank you. Thanks for the attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Please join us next week in person at the Plex for a brief update from Kristen Pates with the United Way of Story County. And then our guest speaker will be State Auditor Rob Sand. So please join us next week. So with that, please stand and join me for as we recite the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Have a wonderful rest of your day.